Hello, my name is Justin McClure. I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the important Spooky Club.
Oh!
Cinema's supposed to be in there somewhere. I got all screwed up, though.
Because it's the Shocktober, second Shocktober episode.
What spooky sound effect did I think of? I want to suck your blood.
I got some spooky sound effects for this week. Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle.
Okay. No, that is...
That's the sound of the wind. Friends, there is nothing scarier
than nothing.
Than nothing.
That's right.
The most scary thing I've always said ever since I was a small boy, my own shadow.
I don't know. I think that the scariest thing to me would be like a monster running towards me.
Probably the scariest thing would be like a big van coming up and somebody grabbing you and putting you in the van.
That's true,
That
Taylor.
scares me, yeah. But no, what's really the scariest thing is the shadows.
Yeah,
and
that's
the wind.
right. Because we're talking about Val Lewton, the producer, not the director, of such films as Cat People, I Walked with a Zombie,
The Leopard Man, The Seventh Guest, The Body Snatcher,
The Ghost Ship,
Isle of the Dead. Was
yep,
that his?
Isle of the
Yes.
Dead, that's one of his. And he's a producer who defined that kind of elevated, it's scarier if you don't know what's coming at you movies.
Elevated horror.
Elevated horror.
Let's take you back to 1942 in Hollywood.
Whoa!
Because there's nothing scarier than financial failure.
That's right, and RKO was going through it.
Because thanks to that irresponsible
Monster.
Orson Welles.
Speaking of Shocktober.
Well, don't worry, they got Orson Welles off the set, and
Yeah.
they had a new motto in 1942: showmanship instead of genius.
That's great.
And you know who the showmanship was? It was this tiny new horror department that they had created, led by a man who was once an assistant to David O. Selznick, a man born in 1904 in Yalta, Russia, which is now the Ukraine. Wrote pulp novels in the 30s before finding his way to Hollywood and being an assistant on such projects as Gone with the Wind.
It's an apocryphal story that he's the one behind that big, long tracking shot that goes up and shows all the bodies of the soldiers.
His idea, at least.
Yes.
In fact, he was the one, I found this out in the Kent Jones documentary, he was the one who went and with a stopwatch to determine when the intermission should be. Which I have trouble believing because it was obviously the part where she says, "I'll never be hungry again."
Yes. I mean, Val Lewton is a guy that supposedly got the RKO job because he was at a party and somebody asked, "Hey, who is that?" He's like, he writes horrible novels. And the person heard horror novels and he's like, I should hire him to run the RKO horror department.
Right. So being a producer, I don't sense was Val Lewton's great dream. He wanted to be a writer, perhaps he wanted to be a director, but instead he devoted himself to this. And he became kind of, I think, the ultimate producer as auteur.
Yeah, I mean, everybody says that he's the guy that essentially built the movie from the ground up, probably in conjunction with the director, but like they planned it, they storyboarded it. He worked on every facet before it went to camera.
And aside from maybe David O. Selznick and maybe Roger Corman, who's obviously also a director, I can't think of another producer who is spoken of in the same auteurist terms that Val Lewton is, even though Val Lewton employed directors who were significant stylists in their own right.
Jacques Tourneur.
Most famously.
Saying it as Frenchy as I can.
Jacques Tourneur. But also...
Your French accent always sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But also Robert Wise, who we found in the RKO editors department. Robson with
Mark Robson.
Mark Robson.
Who was also an editor at RKO as well. I believe they had both worked on Citizen Kane.
Right. People who went on to good careers. In fact, Jacques Tourneur, after directing those first 3 Val Lewton horror movies, was called up to the big leagues.
Yeah, much to Val Lewton's disgust or disappointment.
What has been your feeling towards Val Lewton over the years? Have you ever been a big fan? Because I know that you were raised on The Evil Dead.
Yes.
You know, you like splattery stuff. You like stuff where the camera moves really fast.
Yeah, that's right.
And shenanigans.
You know,
stuff.
just base kind of excitement, just shove it in my eyes.
Because, you know, our podcast is called The Important Cinema Club, and we're here to talk about important movies.
Elevated horror.
What am I saying? What am I saying?
Yep.
But have you ever... Are you now, or have you ever been a Val Lewton fan?
Yeah, of course I am.
Yeah.
Nice short movies, 60 minutes.
What's not to like?
Yeah, a lot of them, like The Leopard Man, big sprawling stories with a whole bunch of characters, great shock set pieces, blood under the door, that's Val Lewton stock and trade.
The Val Lewton movies, they There are ones that I think I have come to over the years. I've seen a number of them over the years, and when I was younger, I was maybe a little underwhelmed. But
it's called The Cat People, and the poster has like a cat person on it.
Yeah.
No cat people in it.
And you sort of be sold on these movies on the idea that, okay, the horror is what's absent, the horror is in the shadows.
Yeah.
And when you're an immature kid,
You're
you think,
like,
give me a monster.
yeah, give me like a guy in like a shitty leopard suit jumping out toward the camera.
And in fact, I say an immature kid, I'm still like that a little
yeah,
bit.
you're right. If I gave you the choice of like, I can give you a movie with like cat people in it, or the version where they're absent, and you haven't seen either, and you have to make a choice.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit like having your medicine to have the Val Lewton version.
But I think that people, when they saw it, it allowed horror, which at that point was defined by the Universal monster movies, take on a different aspect.
Yeah, so it was sort of proto-noir. And also, there are horror movies where you project so much onto them. And as I was revisiting them this week, I realized how certain ones of them had really kind of taken up residence in my memory in the years since I'd seen them. So I remember the first time I saw I Walked with a Zombie, and I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, you're like, where are the zombies?
Yeah, and I was like, wait, that's it at the end?
Yeah,
and
I remember singing the same thing.
And I knew...
Don't you know Jane Eyre?
Yeah. I even at that impressionable age knew that, okay, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
There's something I'm not getting.
There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you couldn't grasp what the movie was trying to give. I mean, we should point out that all these movies have such sensational titles because they were given,
imposed.
by RKO.
Yeah.
So, like, Val Lewton would have never called the movie I Walked with a Zombie, but that was the title they gave him, which is why in the introduction voiceover, the person's like, I walked with a zombie. Sounds silly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. Just to be like, oh, yeah, we know how silly this is.
But I Walked with a Zombie, which I think is my favorite of the Val Lewton movies.
Jacques Tourneur said that was the favorite film he had ever made.
I've said this before, that some of my favorite horror movies are the ones that become like a place. They become more than just a movie. They become, there's something in the mood, there's something in the images where you just want to return to it over and over again. And you want to not just watch I Walked with a Zombie again, but you want to spend more time on that strange plantation in the tropics.
Yeah,
you know?
you can be the white guy in charge.
Yeah, exactly. You want to walk through the sugarcane fields with the leading lady
on the set.
You want
they're shooting.
You want to hear that the wind, and you want to feel the rustle, and
you want to accept death, because that's what the movie's about.
And actually, it's good that you say that it's a set, because this was another thing that threw me off about this movie specifically the first time I saw it.
Really? When you were a kid, you're like, it looks fake.
Well, yeah, when I was in my late teens or so, there was the fact that it does look fake, the fact that whatever the atmosphere of it wasn't quite being communicated to me. But now I see it and I realize...
that's the best.
Exactly, because it's dreamy.
Yeah.
Because it combines elements of reality and artificiality. The wind sounds real. The other sounds sound real. There's something... The fact that it looks sort of like they're in the open air, like the air is coming up against them.
And when you watch the movie just going in, knowing the title, maybe knowing, I think, the kind of contours of it, you're not sure what it's going to deliver to you. Like, you're expecting, like, where's the threat? Where is the big shock set piece? Because, like, other Val Lewton films have them. The Leopard Man does. It has a number of them. So does Cat People.
The Leopard Man is very much structured around, like, 4 set pieces.
Yeah,
you know?
But I Walk with a Zombie does not have those things. It does not have those threat. The real kind of horror is this idea of a woman who is, for all intents and purposes, dead, but she can still walk around, and there's that illusion of, or even nightmarish idea of her still being alive.
It's a love triangle, or maybe a love quadrangle, a love square.
Yeah, a love square.
With this young woman who is a nurse in Ottawa, believe it or not, Ottawa,
Ontario,
who is called to this strange tropical plantation by this wealthy family, specifically this man who is, I guess, the patriarch of the family, whose wife has fallen into this very strange coma.
Yeah, trance almost.
Yeah, where at night she walks around. She is sort of a zombie-like figure. And this nurse has come to try, hopefully, not just take care of the wife, but maybe find some sort of solution for her.
Yeah, and also fuck the husband.
Right, fuck the husband, but also possibly fuck the husband's brother.
That's right, yeah. I mean, this is the only thing that I'm like, ugh, but I understand it's the literary tropes, that Jane Eyre thing, right? It's like the rich kind of mysterious man who has like a wife locked up in the attic.
And often people always say that one of the least interesting things about the Val Lewton movies are the leading actors.
Yeah.
Right? Like the supporting actors are full of interesting, weird people, but, the 2 or 3 romantic leads are typically a little bit glassy and uninteresting because they're people who things happen to.
Yeah, they're not usually that active in what's going on because all these movies have this like fatalistic air to them. Same thing with The Seventh Victim, which like the movie at the end of the day is about a woman accepting death. Like death is unavoidable and it's going to happen to these people eventually. I mean, Val Lewton, who died fairly young, a lot of people said that this kind of like tortured him, this idea of dying and what that means. And he kind of articulated that through these movies.
Apparently he had trouble sleeping in real life.
Yeah, he had really bad insomnia. He had a heart attack before he passed away as well, which kind of put like the fear of death in him.
Another thing that spoke much more strongly to me about I Walked with a Zombie this time around is the whole colonial aspect of it. The fact that this family, we're told very early on by one of the black characters in the film that this family brought slavery to the West Indies. The plantation that they're living on, it's an uncanny space that they're in. It feels kind of barren. It feels bereft of life.
Rotten because they've been there for so long and they're holding on to it, but there's not anything there for them because that's not their place.
And geographically, it definitely feels like this compound that's surrounded by so much that's either mysterious or unknown or dangerous.
But I also think there's also life there. Like you see the life of the slaves that are living on their compound, and they're not portrayed in like mommy-ish roles. They have their own culture and identity that's separate from the white people that live there.
Well, that scene where she's being led through the sugarcane fields, it's like she's being led from this very sort of dead space, this compound where the white people are, and then she's being led, and you hear the drumming in the distance. The distant sound of the drumming is one of the famous things of this movie.
Yeah.
She's being led to it almost like she's being like led into this alternate reality, and the dreamy way that the field looks, it's like you're being drifted off into dreamland,
And there's just no big shocks in the movie because at the end of the day, the one big decision that's made is like, oh, let this zombie person just die and just go away.
Yeah.
And that is the true horror at the end of the movie, or relief, depending on how you look at it, is like you have to let go of these people because eventually they die and they go away. Acceptance of death.
When I was on Letterboxd, I saw somebody point out, I could be quoting Manny Farber about Val Lewton, but instead I'm quoting a Letterboxd random.
That's right.
But I saw
I actually read Manny Farber's Val Lewton kind of eulogy. It was only like a page and a half.
Yeah,
Good.
Their 2-word Letterboxd review was tropical malady.
Okay.
But I actually do think
follow.
Okay, but I
get it. I understand what you mean.
But like putting this movie
Tropical Malady has a monster in it. Thank you very much.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, this one has some scary looking people in it.
Yeah.
But don't you think
a little bit racist?
Don't you think putting this movie in conversation with Apichatpong Weerasethakul is?
I think it's a smart thing to do.
Because these are two filmmakers where they require you to sort of project a lot onto it, or they require you to be participating in what's unfolding.
And I think that also Tropical Malady is also the idea of death and moving on, because characters in that movie are dead, but won't let go and are still kind of hanging around.
Yeah, it's like in I Walked with the Zombie, the past is always present,
And Cat People is Val Lewton's probably his most famous film, his first one, and it was a massive hit. And looking at how it was sold, they sold it like the goriest, like shocking movie you will ever see, and that got people into the door.
It's amazing because it was a big hit and it was apparently a crowd pleaser, although you do wonder, like, were people okay with what they saw? Given the fact that so little happens.
Was there like a Mant style like guy in a cat suit that like ran through the audience at the end?
I guess the movie has just enough spooks and shivers in it.
Yeah, it has a really good jump scare that The Simpsons ripped off beautifully in the Alien episode with the bus pulling up.
So, Cat People, I think, is still the best known Val Lewton movie.
Undoubtedly.
And the plot is you've got this mysterious... she's not that mysterious. She's Serbian. I guess that means that's mysterious enough. And she is married to this dashing young man, but she feels that she has...
Every time she orgasms, she turns to a cat person.
I know. Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah. That's the, I guess, the core idea of the movie. Maybe, do you think people were picking up on that when they were seeing it in theaters? Or?
Probably not, honestly.
No, you don't think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, those dum-dums back in the 50s.
But obviously, if you're calling somebody a cat person, there's something weirdly sexual about that.
Yeah, that's right. That undercurrent of, like, lesbianism in the movie as well.
So this woman is sent to a psychiatrist, the worst psychiatrist I've ever seen in a movie. He's so awful. I mean, patient-doctor confidentiality does not exist in this universe. But she's sent to him and has this, what'd you call it, voodoo? This ancient curse.
Yeah.
In which the spirit of cats inhabits her. And there is some suggestion that maybe she is turning into a cat and killing people, but also maybe not. Meanwhile, her husband starts taking up with this very sexy other woman, which of course leads to the most famous scene in the film, the scene that I think is maybe the quintessential Val Lewton scene, the pool scene.
Yeah, that's right.
Where,
spooky pool.
What is there to say about the scene? The woman is in the pool in the basement of this hotel. The lights are out, but some light is being refracted off of the water in the pool, and it's making strange patterns on the wall. You hear the sound of dripping water. You hear the sound, just echoey pool sounds. And you also hear the sound of growling. And you hear the sounds of her splashing. And the camera, it cuts around the room, and out of that, terror is evoked. But in fact, she does not die.
No,
because
she does
the terror
not die.
is all in your mind.
Well, when somebody dies, that deflates the fear because you don't have anything to worry about anymore. Because, okay, the climactic thing has happened. Now we can move on.
I mean, his movies are loaded with scenes of people walking on the street, draped in shadow. They hear something, and then they walk a little faster, and they walk a little faster, and then eventually they make it onto the bus, or they don't make it onto the bus.
And, it should be noted that all these films are shot by Nicholas Musuraca, who does bring that film noir look. He also shot Tourneurs Out of the Past. So it's all like shafts of light and kind of selected lighting that, again, gives that idea of unreality to everything that you're looking. That these small, compact films that don't give the goods in the way that usually associate climaxes with horror pictures are giving to you it in different ways. The idea of mood. And, it's easy to say this is elevated horror, but it is stylized to the point that it is otherworldly, and I think that's what makes an impact.
I do find that these movies require a different kind of concentration. They require you to be sort of... You can't be a passive viewer to them. You have to sort of immerse yourself in their world. You have to be imagining what this space has meant throughout history. Like, it's not going to spoon feed you, you know?
You're not going to get an opening title card that gives you all the details. Well, I mean, like, The Leopard Man was made... I was released the same year as I Walked as a Zombie and The Seventh Victim. But The Leopard Man almost feels like a reaction to those movies where Val Lewton is going, all right, we didn't have a cat person, but there's an actual leopard in this film. So, and people will actually die. But I'm going to try to do it in a way that you still don't see anything. So it's the horror and the sound of what you're seeing that's disturbing.
Well, there's that great scene very early on where, it's set in this Mexican village, and this woman is being sort of chased by the leopard man, and then
the leopard itself.
The leopard itself, yeah, and you don't see her die, but you see the pool of blood coming through.
All
the bottom.
You hear is her screaming and knocking against the door, and the indifference that her mother shows, being like, all right, I'm coming, until it's already too late.
And then later on, there's the scene in the cemetery where the woman is locked in the cemetery.
Yeah, and there's someone that can help her, but he's like, I'm going to come back. Yeah. And it's like, that's the true terror.
Which is a real nightmare situation, that one.
I mean, we love to go and play in cemeteries. So, and after that, you could sense that Val Lewton in the films that he was producing was kind of losing interest in just doing the horror stuff.
Well, I do think that the perfection of those ones with Jacques Tourneur, it's hard to recapture that, although plenty of good ones came after this.
I mean, there's The Seventh Victim, the one about witches, not one of my favorites.
It's okay.
Yeah.
A good mystery.
The Curse of the Cat People is one I really like, and it is not a horror film. It is a kind of picturesque story of a child and how her imagination deals with kind of the difficulties in her own life, and you do get characters from the cat people, including the woman who would turn to a cat person, but it's just like a figment of the girl's imagination. And it was one of the early films directed by Robert Wise, the editor on a bunch of Orson Welles films, would go on to do The Haunting, another Lewton-esque film where you don't see anything.
And he would do The Sound of Music also.
Yeah, that's
also
right, The Sound of Music.
Nice compact little thriller.
all these directors, after a while, I think even didn't Tourneur direct some big like war epics near the end of them bloated insanity? Because you got to pay those bills and nobody else will hire you.
Later on, of course, Lewton would attract some actual horror stars with Boris Karloff in Isle of the Dead, which is a very fun movie.
Yeah, also The Body Snatcher and Bedlam, which I watched, which is, again, not really a horror film, almost a drama about the mental institutions of yesteryears and how bad they were. But you do get those like touches of horror stuff in it. But you can tell that it just didn't interest him. And if he had successes like he did with Tourneur went on to go do bigger and better things. And supposedly the studio said, oh, we'd like to move you on to other things as well, Lewton, but you have to ditch your crew like Mark Robson and people like that. And supposedly Val was very loyal to his people, and that one of the reasons he worked with Mark Robson so much is they said, okay, no, don't give me the big budget. I'll continue to make these horror films, and I'll continue fighting with the producers about what those horror films actually deliver, till it kind of ran out of steam. And his last few pictures, My Own True Love, Please Believe Me, and Apache Drums, were considered failures. They were taken away from him, recut. When you're working in a world where like your film's only an hour long and they're essentially considered B pictures, there's a lot less involvement. But when those become successes, and then you have to deliver like bigger films, and you can't make the movie that you want to make.
He died prematurely in 1951. There are, in fact, no home movies of him, and there's
no recordings of his voice.
Yeah, which is incredible.
But there are films that continued outside of him that just continued his aesthetic, like the aforementioned Haunting, Curse of the Demon, the Tourneur film could be assumed as a Val Lewton produced picture because it might as well be. That's another film where the producers were like, oh no, this needs a monster, so they like edited in a monster into the film. It was like, oh,
right, and that's what's on the Blu-ray box now.
So funny. Yeah. It's on the poster. Yeah. And that monster, while it does appear, it doesn't connect to much because it doesn't really matter. So watching these movies, did you get more of an appreciation of his films, revisiting them?
Certainly, absolutely. And like I've always liked him. I've always wanted to like him, and I sort of feel like these movies will only continue to ferment for me.
And these movies are available on the Criterion channel right now, which makes me think, are they going to put out a box set? There was a good DVD set that came out a while back.
In fact, I think Shout Factory is putting a lot of them on Blu-ray
that's
now.
Right, because they did a remaster of...
They just put out The Leopard Man.
Yeah, and I heard that and The Body Snatcher were like really difficult restoration jobs that they spent a lot of money on, and that the Blu-rays have just not been moving. So, they don't know if they're going to do any more. I mean, they haven't done the Cat People. Wait, did the Cat People come out recently? I don't remember.
Criterion put out Cat People.
Oh, yeah, so there you go. So,
well, I bought both of those Shout Factory Blu-rays.
So they got your dollars?
I'm exempt from the shame.
Would you buy a Walk as a Zombie when it comes out?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so you heard it here, Scream Factory. I'm sure they listen to this
Put
podcast.
It out.
Okay, so this week on our Patreon, what are we talking about, Will?
Well, we are doing a listener's choice selection, and we decided to reward the gentleman who created the Important Cinema Club wiki.
Yep, that's right. There's an Important Cinema Club wiki now. And I don't remember the exact address. Just search Important Cinema Club wiki. I'm sure it'll come up.
He asked us to talk about Halloween comfort food movies, and also one of his Halloween comfort food movies, Adam Wingard's The Guest.
So that's what we talk about on the podcast. You can check it out for $5 a month at patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club. And for people that are Patreon subscribers or are thinking about it, we also have a Discord. So it's like a chat room that you can join. There's a bunch of Important Cinema Club listeners love to chat it out about whatever movie-related thing are on their mind.
Wouldn't it be great to finally have a friend?
Yeah, so you can get one on the Discord channel. And as per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from a fan regarding the golden age of cinema. Not the one you think. Hi, Will and Justin. It goes without saying that I am a fan of the show, and I have subscribed to your Patreon since, well, I have no clue. Ooh, that's the best Patreon subscriber. The one who has amnesia about when he learned about it. I want to say, around shortly after having started listening to the main show, I migrated on over from Michael and Us, and my interest was piqued.
Do you not listen to Michael and Us anymore?
Oh, who, me?
No, this listener. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he definitely does.
Okay, good.
And my interest was piqued when I heard y'all had an episode on the original Black Klansman. Yeah, I forgot we did that.
The Ted V. Michaels film, yeah.
I mean, how many places offer opinions and insights into films such as that? Not that many. Anyway, I love
And, maybe there's a reason for that.
Anyways, I love the show, and as mentioned, I'm a Patreon supporter.
Thank you.
Thank you. A while ago on your Discord server, I asked you if you two would ever consider doing an episode on Mexican cinema. I got a reply from Justin saying perhaps toward the end of the year. Now I hold you to it.
Oh, shit.
Kidding aside, should you all ever do an episode on the topic, I can't help but wait to hear what you two know and think about the golden age of Mexican cinema. I can let you know right now. Nothing. How about you, Will?
Yeah, similar. I'm sorry. I would love to know more.
I'm sure an episode on Mexican cinema will be broad, and that perhaps the way most of you will cover the topic is by selecting a few famous or landmark movies, such as The Exterminating Angel or Y Tu Mama Tambien. But Mexico's history of cinema is vast, and before Hollywood seeped into the cultural domination, Mexico has its own productive industry. Rather than waiting for an episode on the topic, what do you know about the stars and filmmakers of Mexican cinema's golden age? Juan from Texas. Well, we already entered that question.
Well, I love The Exterminating Angel.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great film.
I mean...
Because Louis Buñuel, is he...
It's technically a Mexican filmmaker.
But let's not take that from them.
No, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think of all the Canadian films we wouldn't have that are made by, American directors who came to Canada to make them. So many. Even Black Christmas.
Exactly. Sorry, I need to get back on this one because it's... Mexican cinema is a shameful blind spot for me.
So, I just randomly, before this letter came in, picked up a book at the library on the Indian Maria. Have you ever heard about this character?
No.
She's almost like a Jerry Lewis-like figure in Mexico. She, produced and starred and directed in her own films. There's, spooky films where she, guerrilla involved things and other stuff like that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that is definitely... The problem is, looking at, Letterboxd, almost nothing of hers is reviewed. And the ones that do review it are not very fond of her. But the fact that there's a book written on her, and the fact that, there is a figure like that in Mexican cinema, I think that would be an interesting way to approach it. I've also pitched Santo movies.
Yeah, well, I'd love to do Santo, yeah. How about
that would be a good Shocktober one, because that's...
Maybe next year.
Yeah,
let's put it on the calendar.
That's
and
right.
what about Cantinflas? You remember that guy Cantinflas? He's the Mexican Charlie Chaplin. He's the he was in the Around the World in 80 Days, the David Niven one.
Oh, I've never heard of him or seen any of his movies.
Cantinflas, I think, is what his name is. If the letter writer has any insight on Cantinflas, I would like to know more.
Last October, I went through a Mexican horror phase, because they have a lot of, Even the Wind is Afraid, The Brainiac, that may be on a relief as a certain movie, came up from Gold Ninja Video. Don't want to spoil anything. And other stuff like The Dark Pit of Dr. M or The Black Pit of Dr. M. There's a Mexican horror kind of wave, and they feel different than any other movie. And so, there's a lot to kind of discover there. Oh, and, Mexico has all of its own, mythology and stories. There was a DVD label a few years ago that started putting them out in, special editions, and they've gone out of print, but that just goes to show that they are available, that if you're looking for them, to check it out. So I recommend doing it this Halloween season. And we will definitely, I promise, a Mexican-related figure before the end of the year.
Okay,
we got to do it. We've never done it, and that's been one of my lists that I'm other than Louis Buñuel, which is, again, we don't want to take it away from them, but it is a bit of a cheat. So thanks for sending that letter. All right, so what are we doing next week, Will?
Next week, we will be looking at the wild world of Asian horror with a director whose name I actually don't know, but I do know his work.
Yes. What are some of his work as I look up the exact pronunciation of his?
The Boxer's Omen, Killer Snakes, Hex,
Killer Constable, Ghost Eyes. He just made... he was known as the gross out guy at the Shaw Brothers studio. And just like we have difficulty saying his exact name, he's not a filmmaker that people, I think of as a figure like a Fulci or even a Bava that I really like that person's films. And I think that it may have something to do with the availability of his films and that for a long time they were very difficult to see.
And also the fact that the Shaw Brothers studio is sort of thought of as its own auteur.
Yes, that's right. And they're also known as martial arts films. People don't usually talk about Shaw Brothers films that don't fall within that kind of genre template. His name is Kwei Chi Hung, and I know I'm saying that incorrectly. Please excuse me. He has kind of an amazing filmography, as that he was also the international guy for the Shaw Brothers, so he did like a lot of co-productions. He did a movie that was known as The Bod Squad, and also Virgin of the Seven Seas.
Sounds good.
Which was a German sex comedy meets kung fu, I guess, mix them up. So I'm excited to rewatch A Boxer's Omen. Will I like it this time? Because I've kind of disliked it every time that I've seen it. Who knows?
I love it.
Too slow for me. That's the issue.
Too slow for you.
Yeah, that there's a lot of crazy stuff, but it's parsed out at a very glacial pace.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
Yeah, I know. I've watched it. I have a whole group of people. We all watch it together, and we were like, this is slow. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
You know what? I am more elevated than I am before then, and so I look forward to that one, and Bewitched, and probably Killer Snakes. Oh, he also did a Giallo, Corpse Mania, so I will definitely be checking that one out
Killer
as well.
Snakes has been on my list for a long time.
A lot of snake violence, so if you don't like animals being hurt on screen, do not watch it, because I remember seeing it and being like, oh my god, the ending of it. So that's what we're doing next week, and until then, I'm Justin Clue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. So, the Laser Blast Film Society, if you live in Toronto and you are not attending these monthly screenings, what are you doing with your life?
You're missing out on film history in the making.
That's right. And we did a special screening this month, which, I mean, it's not that special because a lot of places around the world are doing it.
It was special because the attendance was very high this
It
month.
was very high.
You got a lot of normies out this month.
We did. Why won't they come out with the other actually rare stuff that we play? Scream for help on 35mm on a print that had never even been put on reels. All right, anyway.
I'll tell you why I didn't make it out to that one, because Goblin was performing in town the same night.
Ugh, disgusting, Will.
Yeah.
You hadn't seen Goblin before?
No, I hadn't.
Oh, okay. I've seen them twice, so I guess I'll give you a pass. But, and I didn't even remember that you weren't there, but thanks for reminding me. No, I have another thing to add to my Will grudge list.
When our falling out eventually happens.
That's right. And so we played Tammy and the T-Rex, an infamous film. I remember as a kid seeing it on VHS all the time, because I was like, ooh, T-Rex related cinema. Never watched it until Vinegar Syndrome announced that they had found the R-rated version of the film, which, why does that exist?
Tammy and the T-Rex, if you don't know it, it stars a young Denise Richards and Paul Walker.
A very committed Denise Richards.
Denise Richards and Paul Walker are high school students, and Paul Walker, God, I don't know, he goes into a coma and
he's attacked by a lion,
right,
and then he goes into a coma that he wakes up from, but evil, what's his name?
Mad scientist.
Yes, played by Weekend at Bernie's himself.
Right, and Ellen Dubin from No Deposit.
Oh, is that who it is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. She's Art Hindle's wife, isn't she?
Exactly,
and she's
yeah.
like, you fucking piece of shit. And No Deposit.
I sold out my brother for pussy. Such a good movie. Anyway.
Halloween viewing, the Sicilian Vampire.
Yeah. So anyway, they're mad scientists, and they want to take Paul Walker's brain out of his head and put it into the brain of their giant animatronic dinosaur.
Yes. And so this movie was made because supposedly the director was told that a guy had a giant theme park dinosaur for 10 days, and that could he shoot a movie around it, and so he did.
Right, and a lot of the movie is there's this dinosaur walking around with Paul Walker's brain, but he doesn't talk.
No.
But he does go on a killing spree, killing all of Paul Walker's enemies.
Almost instantly.
And in the version that you screened, it's full of scenes of people's entrails getting torn out.
Their heads being squished, just blood flying off.
Really hideous, and he reconnects with his girlfriend, Denise Richards, and...
They fuck.
Well, they don't fuck.
Yeah, they do, because the guy's like, do you see how she's walking? That's how I know she's been with the dinosaur.
I don't think so.
I think so. I think the movie would go there.
But how is that even possible? Physically.
I don't know.
Well, the movie does end. I am going to spoil the ending of Tammy and the T-Rex. Mm-hmm. It ends with an amazing scene where Paul Walker's brain has been recovered from the dinosaur, but a new body has not been found for it yet. But it's a brain in a jar with a lot of like electrical equipment tied to it, and there's like a camera that's been attached to it, and there's a vocal thing, so the brain talks.
Yep.
And Denise Richards I guess she can't have sex with it.
Yes.
But she does do a striptease, and then sparks come out of the brain.
Comes.
The brain comes.
Yes.
And that's the final scene.
What do you think about... I was reading some reviews a while back of people saying, I don't enjoy this movie because people treat it as it's so bad it's good, but the director's obviously making a comedy, so that takes away from the idea of like, well, it's not that funny then, because it's just jokes that don't work.
I thought it was very funny.
I thought it was very funny.
I went into this movie assuming that it would be terrible.
Yes.
I thought, Justin and Peter have sold out. This is for the normies, but I am going to make a courtesy appearance here.
Okay.
And then watching this movie, I realized that I was laughing, and I was laughing at things the movie wanted me to laugh at.
Yes, but I think you also laugh harder than I think the movie... Like that violence, I think the movie thinks it's funny, but I don't think it understands how violent it's making these things.
Okay, but what about the scene where the dinosaur with Paul Walker's brain in it is trying to communicate his identity to Denise Richards, and he plays charades.
Charades with her. And we should point out that the dinosaur has, like, stretchy arms that the movie never comments on.
He's gigantic, and he's also kind of rubbery.
Yeah, that's right. At one point, he, like, picks up a phone and tries to call her, but then realizes he can just growl.
And I gotta say, whole new respect for Denise Richards, because she plays these scenes so well.
Yes.
Just totally committed.
Like, tears in her eyes, like, not any sense of like, oh, this is a joke and I'm like mugging for the camera. Like, she does it right. So the scene where Paul Walker and the bully grab each other's balls.
That's funny. Yeah.
Great stuff. It's a movie that if you're looking at it and you're like, well, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, will it just be bad? No, it's funny. It's good.
And I'm also intrigued by the director now because it's the same director as Mac and Me.
Yes.
And that was another reason why I was reluctant to watch this movie.
Have you seen Mac and Me?
Yeah, it's funny, but it's like...
it's horrifying.
I enjoy Mac and Me, but I saw this movie, Tammy and the T-Rex, and I thought, okay, well, he was just a hack. And
yeah, when was the last time I saw Mac and Me, though?
Probably 3 years ago.
There's that amazing scene where they find the almost dead Max, and they look like withered, like, corpses of like a country that are like starving, and they give him the elixir of life, which is like Coke, and they're like,
right,
and they drink it. Like, that is like morally reprehensible.
Mac and Me is a hilarious movie, but it felt to me like just the product of a bunch of corporations got together and made this Frankenstein monster
film. But then he pushed it in such a horrifying direction afterwards.
Well, so now that I've seen Tammy and the T-Rex, I realize, okay, there may be a mad genius at work here. And then when I found out that he was involved in
Roar.
Yeah, Roar, which is, if you folks haven't seen it, that's the movie starring Tippi Hedren and Melanie Griffith with the actual lions they own, and it was made by this community of insane Hollywood people who have a lion like preservation grounds where they just hang out with lions.
It is, if you haven't seen it and you watch it, it'll be the scariest movie you see this Halloween season.
Oh my god, Roar is horrifying because so many people actually got mauled on camera.
And you watch it and you think like, oh, I know nobody really died watching it, so it's not going to be that frightening. But it is.
Oh yeah.
There's some scenes where people are delivering dialogue and a lion just attacks them and they're like, oh, in the middle of their line of dialogue.
And so when I find out that he was involved in that community and that he almost directed Roar, and then I see all these scenes of people's like being dismembered by this T-Rex, it's clear that, okay, he's working through stuff.
Yeah.
This may be a mad visionary.
So are you going to check out Mannequin 2 on the Move as well?
Yeah, I'll watch, what was that one? Bikini Beach with Billy Zane and Kelly Brook or whatever.
Direct that one?
Yeah, something like that.
I do love Billy Zane.